At 79, I've gathered plenty of wisdom along life's journey, but there's one decision that haunts me daily: moving into a nursing home. When I made the choice, it seemed sensible. My children insisted it was for the best, promising I'd receive excellent care and companionship. I trusted their judgment. But after settling in, I discovered the reality was vastly different from what I'd been led to believe. For those of you contemplating this path, whether for yourself or someone you love, I want to share my experience. Perhaps you believe it's the safest option, or you've been told it will simplify everything. Before you take that irreversible step, let me share 6 truths I wish someone had explained to me beforehand, because life in a nursing facility isn't just about having your needs met, it fundamentally alters your existence. And once you're in, finding your way out becomes remarkably difficult. Listen carefully until the end, as some of these revelations might catch you off guard. And if someone in your circle is weighing this decision, this message might be precisely what they need before making such a life-altering choice. Now, let's begin. Truth number 1: your independence vanishes overnight. The most jarring aspect of moving into a nursing home wasn't the unfamiliar surroundings, the institutional food, or even the strangers surrounding me. It was the sudden realization that I had surrendered control over my daily existence. Before the move, I lived by my own rhythms. I chose when to rise, when to eat, and how to fill my hours. I could venture outdoors whenever the mood struck, prepare meals that satisfied my cravings, or simply unwind in my cherished recliner with a novel. Inside the nursing home, I quickly understood that my time belonged to the institution. Everything operated according to their timetable, not mine. Meals appeared at designated hours, regardless of my hunger. Bedtime was enforced whether I felt tired or not. Wanting fresh air? You'll likely need permission and must wait for someone available to accompany you. Simple decisions like menu choices or clothing selections began to feel like special privileges rather than fundamental rights. I recall my initial days there, waking in an unfamiliar bed. I reached instinctively for the mystery novel I'd been enjoying at home. But as I surveyed my new quarters, reality struck. This wasn't my sanctuary. My books, my comfortable chair, the meaningful possessions I'd accumulated over decades had vanished. Instead, I found myself surrounded by institutional walls and generic furnishings I hadn't selected. The most painful realization? Understanding that once you surrender your autonomy, reclaiming it becomes nearly impossible. You adapt because there's no alternative. You stop questioning the meal options. You cease asking for spontaneous activities. You conform to their systems, but in doing so, you begin losing your identity. If you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you prepared to relinquish the small freedoms that make life distinctly yours? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them with an intensity you never anticipated. Truth number 2: the outside world continues without you. One of the most painful discoveries about nursing home life is realizing that life beyond those walls proceeds as if you never existed. Initially, my family assured me they'd visit regularly. In the beginning, they kept their word. My son appeared weekly. My grandchildren stopped by on weekends. For a brief period, I maintained a connection to my former existence. As time passed, however, visits dwindled. My son began calling instead of appearing in person. My grandchildren became preoccupied with their education and careers. Special occasions proved especially difficult. Everyone promised they'd come, but invariably, plans changed at the 11th hour. Suddenly, I found myself alone in the communal area, watching fellow residents gazing hopefully at the entrance, waiting for visitors who might never arrive. It wasn't that my family stopped caring. They simply became absorbed in their own lives. When you're not physically present in someone's daily routine, it becomes easy for them to assume you're managing well, that you're adjusting successfully, that you don't require their presence as much as you once did. The truth is, the longer you remain in a nursing facility, the easier it becomes for people to forget just how much you still need their company. One evening, I sat holding my phone, debating whether to call my daughter. I didn't want to impose. I didn't want to remind her that I was here, waiting for a visit that seemed increasingly unlikely. So I set the phone aside, and that's when the truth hit me. This was my new reality, watching days blend together, hoping someone might remember I still existed. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the profound loneliness? Because regardless of how much your family loves you, once you're removed from their daily sight, it's surprisingly easy to become forgotten. If you're still engaged with this message and finding value in these insights, please comment number 2 below to acknowledge your presence. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications so you won't miss future content. Now, let's continue. Truth number 3, your sense of purpose disappears. When I relocated to the nursing home, I believed I was simply changing my address. I didn't understand I was also surrendering my reason for existence. At home, I had responsibilities. I maintained routines, pursued interests, and had compelling reasons to begin each day. Even minor tasks, tending to houseplants, brewing my morning coffee, organizing my living space, provided a sense of purpose. In the nursing home, those daily rhythms evaporated. Meals appeared without my effort. Cleaning happened around me. The plants, they were no longer mine to nurture. Initially, I convinced myself that relaxation would be welcome. No more chores, no more obligations, just rest. But within weeks, I sensed something vital missing. Days stretched endlessly with nothing to anticipate but the next scheduled activity. I observed this pattern in other residents too. People who once radiated vitality now spent their days sitting silently, staring blankly, waiting for time to pass. There was a woman named Margaret, 86, who had taught piano her entire life. At home, she practiced daily, composed simple melodies, shared her passion with neighborhood children. Here, there was no instrument, no students, nothing for her creative spirit to nurture. I watched her withdraw, her fingers, once nimble and expressive, now motionless in her lap. "I feel purposeless," she confided one afternoon. And I understood perfectly. When you no longer have something to nurture, something to strive toward, existence begins losing its significance. Your mind dulls, your body follows suit. Eventually, you become just another resident in a place where time progresses, but nothing meaningful changes. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself what gives your life meaning. Because once you move in, finding purpose isn't simply about occupying time. It's about struggling to preserve the activities that make you feel alive. Truth number 4, your health deteriorates faster than you'd imagine. Before entering the nursing home, I was relatively healthy for my age. I wasn't particularly athletic, but I managed my own care. I took daily walks and prepared nutritious meals. I maintained modest routines that kept me active, shopping for groceries, stretching each morning, even just moving around my house to maintain mobility. After moving in, everything shifted. Initially, it seemed I was simply taking advantage of conveniences. Meals arrived at my door, eliminating kitchen time. If I needed assistance, I simply pressed a button for immediate help. What I failed to realize was that the less I did independently, the weaker I became. My activity level decreased dramatically, and soon my joints stiffened. I spent more time seated than ever before, and suddenly, rising from a chair became challenging. The muscle tone I'd maintained for years deteriorated more rapidly than I could have predicted. This pattern affected others as well. People who arrived ambulatory soon relied on mobility aids. Those who once managed independently now required assistance with tasks they previously handled effortlessly. The more help we received, the more dependent we became. I remember my neighbor, Thomas, an 80-year-old former postal worker who arrived quite vigorous. He initially walked the facility's perimeter daily, insisting that age was merely a number. Within months, I noticed his walks shortening. Then he began using a cane, then a walker. One day he remarked, "It's strange, I feel like I've aged a decade in just a few months." That observation resonated deeply. When you stop using your physical capabilities, you begin losing them. In a nursing environment, where everything is designed for convenience, it's easy to forget that movement isn't simply about getting places, it's about survival. Had I understood how quickly my strength would diminish, I would have fought harder to remain active, to maintain mobility, to challenge myself even when it seemed unnecessary. If you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself, will you maintain the discipline to keep physically active when everything around you encourages passivity? Because once you begin declining, reversing the process becomes extraordinarily difficult. If you're still engaged with this message and finding these insights valuable, Please comment number 4 below to indicate your presence. And if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to ensure you don't miss future content. Your support enables us to continue creating meaningful content that informs and inspires. Let's proceed. Truth number 5. Your privacy and dignity are compromised. One aspect I failed to fully consider before entering a nursing home was the extent to which my privacy would diminish. At home, I controlled my environment. I could close my door, enjoy silence when desired, and conduct my affairs privately. In a nursing home, privacy becomes a scarce commodity. From arrival day, I felt constantly observed, staff entering without warning, scheduled room inspections, communal spaces offering little solitude. Even fundamental activities like dressing or using the bathroom often required assistance. I understand the staff were performing their duties, but accepting help for activities you've managed independently throughout your life is profoundly challenging. I recall my initial weeks, struggling with the realization that I needed permission for previously autonomous actions. Want to bathe? You might wait until staff availability. Need the restroom? Pressing the call button sometimes means uncomfortable delays. Even meal preferences were limited. If the day's menu doesn't appeal, you simply manage with what's available. Then there's the roommate situation. Private rooms are rare, and sharing space with a stranger, someone you didn't choose, creates tension. I was fortunate to have a considerate roommate, but others described less pleasant experiences. Some endured roommates who were disruptive, unhygienic, or experiencing cognitive difficulties that made rest impossible. No matter how you personalize your space, it never truly becomes yours. Dignity erodes gradually, and I didn't realize how much of mine I'd sacrifice until it was gone. When people knock but enter before you respond, when you're addressed as a patient rather than an individual, when your daily schedule follows institutional convenience rather than personal preference, it transforms you. You begin feeling less like yourself and more like an entry in a logbook. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared to relinquish the privacy and autonomy you've maintained throughout your life? Because once surrendered, these aspects of dignity rarely return. Truth number 6. Leaving is far more difficult than you'd expect. When I first entered the nursing home, I considered it experimental. I thought I'd evaluate the situation and, if unsatisfactory, simply return home. What I didn't anticipate was how challenging departure would become once I was established. Initially, it seemed straightforward. If unhappy, I'd return to my residence. But home had changed during my absence. My house stood vacant, and managing it remotely became problematic. My children had begun divesting items they deemed unnecessary, even considering renting the property. When I mentioned returning, they hesitated. Are you certain you can manage independently? Wouldn't continuing here be safer? We're only concerned about your well-being. Then there was the physical decline factor. After months in an environment where cooking, cleaning, and even walking distances were unnecessary, my capabilities had diminished. The independence I once took for granted had eroded, making the prospect of independent living more daunting than I'd anticipated. My confidence in self-sufficiency had wavered, and that uncertainty kept me institutionalized. I encountered others with similar experiences. They envisioned brief nursing home stays, only to discover that departure wasn't as straightforward as anticipated. The longer your residence, the more challenging readjustment to outside living becomes. Some lost options entirely. Once their homes were sold or their finances depleted by care expenses, returning became impossible. That's the information nobody provides. Entry seems reversible, but for most residents, it isn't. The nursing home gradually encompasses your entire existence, and eventually, your previous life becomes a fading memory. If you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the possibility that once admitted, departure might prove extraordinarily difficult? Because once established, the barriers to leaving, whether financial, physical, or psychological, often prove more formidable than anticipated. If you're still engaged with this message and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to indicate your presence. And if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to ensure you don't miss future content. Your support enables us to continue creating meaningful content that informs and inspires. Final reflections. Looking back, I don't regret aging, but I deeply regret believing a nursing home represented my only option. I entered expecting comfort, security, and enhanced quality of life. Instead, I discovered an environment that gradually stripped away my independence, privacy, purpose, and even my identity. Does this suggest all nursing facilities are detrimental? Not necessarily. Some individuals genuinely require their level of care. But before making this decision, carefully consider what you're surrendering. Because once you relocate, your life transforms irreversibly. If I could revisit my decision, I would have fought harder to remain home, explored additional support options without sacrificing autonomy, and ensured I truly needed institutional care before making such a permanent transition. And if you're confronting this decision, I hope you'll ask yourself, is this genuinely optimal for me? Or merely what seems most convenient at present? Because your current lifestyle, your routines, your independence, your choices, deserves preservation for as long as possible. Thank you for joining today's discussion. We welcome your feedback. Please comment below, sharing one insight you've gained and how you'll apply it. Your thoughts matter deeply to us, so please share freely. Reading your comments provides tremendous motivation and encouragement. If you found this content helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support enables us to continue creating meaningful content that informs and inspires. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to connecting in our next video.